I came here to Berkeley in February 1983. Brigitte stayed home with the children because through a common friend who was living in Italy, the Jablonkos, Alison and Marek, whose daughter was Brigitte's student, private student in Tuscany, we heard of this Anne Crowden starting a school in Berkeley. So I said, before we decide, let's go and see. So I came over and was just mesmerized in a way. First by Anne, she was living on Ensenada, near Solano. First by her enthusiasm, this great musician who wanted to teach, to educate children, whose daughter was there, Deirdre, just having a baby. The baby was crying all night next door. But that was all right. And then Solano, the bookshops, and then we went to San Francisco where other friends of these common friends in Italy who were living, they had given us their address. So I went there, they showed me the beach, they showed me San Francisco, the Fisherman's Wharf, all these things which seemed so much larger and bigger than whatever we had in Florence. Beautiful city, Renaissance city, but Renaissance is 500 years ago. Instead, here it was looking forward, and I thought that for our children, we were thinking that already before I came, it would be good to come out of this provincial city and rather snobbish city of Florence in certain social levels, let's say. And so I came back enthusiastic and told her, I think that's what we should do. Go and then see. A year, 2 years, 3 years, and then we come back. And instead, it was much more than 2 or 3 years. It was 18. So I met Anne at that point, and the idea of starting a school pleased me a lot, because I was teaching in Florence at Stanford, Georgetown, Ann Arbor universities, which have their third year abroad. But it wasn't enough salary, first of all. It was just 1 or 2 hours a week in each. And I did like the enthusiasm of the American students who were there in Florence. They wanted to know more, they asked questions, so I thought, America is like this, let's go. And in fact, although not at that level, but it was like this. We were really very happy to have chosen this move. So in August we moved here. Anne had rented a very peculiar house in El Cerrito. It was the only thing that she found at the last minute, because Anne was usually doing things at last minute in a rush. And up 46 steps was this crooked house. It was leaning on one side with a carrot red carpet, a huge picture of autumn on the back wall of the living room. And we stayed there for a year.
It's a beautiful view.
Beautiful view, that's true. But the first thing you saw was an electric wire just in front of you. So, yes. And then we got acquainted with the city of Berkeley and so on. But then we start with the school. That's another question, I guess.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the very beginnings. How you had this...
Well, when I came here in February, Anne already had the idea and had summoned what was to be the board, the first board. There was Colin Hampton, I remember, who was a great person, Anna Zender, and a few parents, I don't remember who it was. So we were maybe 4 and 5.
Maybe Stevie,
board members.
Stevie Corpus, was she one of them? And Jean
Stevie
Chastain,
Corpus,
Yeah.
Jean Chastain, that's right. Parents, I don't remember, maybe not. Anyway, there were 4 or 5 people.
At this time, I think in February, they had 3 or 4 kids interested.
Yes, so Anne didn't even know whether the school was going to open or not. She said, if we have less than 10, we can't, financially. And so even in June, calling Anne, so how many students are there? Are you going to open or not? We had decided to go. And then finally, I think it was the end of June, said, yeah, there are 11. All right, let's go. Then it turned, there were 12, I think, at the last minute.
But all the parents were very enthusiastic about it, very courageous. They had no idea it was going to go. But, it was a very special energy, I'd say.
Why this type of school at that time? What about that?
What I liked about it was this balance between music and the academics, which remained the real pillar of the school, this balance. Because I loved classical music, Brigitte is a musician, we always listened to classical music, and I thought that an artistic branch, whatever, in this case it's music, but it could be dance, it could be theater, it could be visual arts, together with the academics would really form students well balanced. And that idea I liked very much. And then the idea of coming to the US with 3 young children, Tommaso was 9, Sofia 7, Nerina 5. I think we thought it was good for them to open up their horizon.
And I think also for Anne it was very important to have the kids in middle school who usually wants to be like their peers, and usually drop music because they make fun of them or whatever. She said they need a place where everybody's playing so they will not be different. And in fact it was very impressive for that because every kid at 8 o'clock in the morning when they arrived, you know, the little violinists were trying the cellos and the cellists there was a big, it was completely normal to play music, and that's very important at this age. They need this support. And Anne said to support their own her own private students, she said they need a social thing that support them at this age. And she's completely right.
Why Berkeley, do you think? Why the Bay Area or this part of the Bay?
Also because, first of all, we hadn't visited any other areas of the US. And then it was rather close to Europe in many ways, with the university, all this diversity of students. San Francisco, a lot of tourists. It was an attraction for Europeans, I would say, this area particularly.
And also because Anne was living here.
Yeah.
It was her place. And for us it was extraordinary because in Europe it would be completely impossible. If you want to start a school, you need at least 3-4 years to get all the papers to be able to open it, and then you are so discouraged that you renounce. Instead here, you want to open a school, just get 5-6 people together and you just do it without any plans or control or whatever. And that was really extraordinary for us.
You keep coming back to Anne. Okay, so Anne, this kind of spark that she had. What do you think distinguished her as a teacher, especially of middle school age children? What about her?
Mm-hmm. She really wanted the middle school age because she said since the beginning that this was a turning point in the growth of a child, of a student, and that very often those were the crucial years where they could either lose interest in music or just in anything else because they didn't have the support, as Brigitte was saying, that was necessary. And at the same time, there's an enthusiasm at this age which you can foster, which you can nourish, which probably, where they are teenagers, is more difficult because they have all sorts of other influences on their lives. And maybe also, she thought from her own education of Deirdre that it was important, this age group. And I think that she was perfectly right.
I think also her parents, her father was a director of a school too. So she was raised in this, and she knew how important, and she had so much energy herself, this passion, I think is very important for her. That she needed to, how do can you say that?
Expand. In italiano posso
Sì.
dimentico
Forse in
sempre.
italiano. Ora devo pensare in inglese.
Well, I remember Colin Hampton once said, "Oh, Anne, she's a locomotive. You just have to go behind her and she'll lead. She's a leader."
She's a leader,
And that we felt from the beginning. She had a plan, she wanted to do something valuable, and we were ready to attach ourselves to the locomotive. I mean.
And she had this liberty of mind, freedom of mind, that she had very clear ideas, but she was always ready to move here and there if it was necessary, or she was not rigid at all. That's very important.
How did you work out the details of the curriculum? How did you decide what to teach in the school?
Well, we talked about it on the first meeting with the board. And as I know French, I said as foreign language, we could teach French. Now I'm thinking that maybe the school should switch to Spanish, but that's a very personal idea now. But then she also agreed that French was important as a good Scottish, not English woman. French was important. And then for the rest, they needed science, they needed math, they needed English, history. And that's more or less what we set up for the academics. Then they needed music history, they needed music theory, all that part, which I not even being able to read music, I couldn't contribute, let's say, for that part of the curriculum.
But I remember also that when she talked with the Jablonko about us, or maybe also before, because Anne, their daughter were having summer class with Hurwitz in England with Anne also, and she told them that she was really looking for somebody with a European background to give these American children a sense of culture a little more deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why she was very enthusiastic.
And perhaps also more demanding. That's something that she liked. The European teachers usually have a curriculum rather strict, and they want the children to get there at the end of the year. Whereas she had the impression, at least, that the schools here were much more loose and lax. So I think that's another part of the European education that she wanted to put into school.
Yeah.
And how did you work out this relationship between academics and music? I mean, how did you...
Well, she had very, very clear ideas from the beginning, from 8 to 10, music, every day. And then I came in and said, well, how many hours of French do you want? So first she was only giving 2. They know 2 for a language is not enough. You need at least 3. I think we ended with 4. 4 hours a week. Then science, also important. I thought they needed more than 2, but I think at the beginning it was only 2 hours a week. Maybe now they have 3, I don't know. English, of course, every day. And then the music part, she decided how many were necessary.
But I remember also that very often you try to combine music and
yes,
plays
with that
with
later.
so that's important too.
Yeah, well, the idea was also not to have this rigid separation between the various teachings, but try and blend them together and have common programs for both. So, for instance, one year we did this most beautiful show, which was the Shostakovich Quartet,
Number 8.
while the children were miming the Russian Revolution. And that came nearly naturally. I mean, she liked this quartet. She wanted the children to play it.
Also, we had very special 4 children at this moment.
Very, good
very
musicians.
Incredible musicians
who were able to play that piece. And so she looked through the score, and I was listening. This is more allegro, this is more adagio, this is more tragic, and so on. And so I was thinking about what could they mime. So it was first the gaiety in the streets, and the jugglers, and the women going with a basket full of eggs and things like that. Very colorful, all this. And for the color part, that was Hannah Zender. She was a great help to set up these plays.
And
She did all the decoration,
With the
the
children,
sets
the-
with the children. That was part of their
art class,
class.
history class, and music.
And then there was the Russian Revolution, the tragedies, the killings. There was this mount of children dead on the
On the floor.
on the stage. And then I came in as a priest with a long beard and blessing all these dead children with this very pathetic music of Shostakovich in that in that movement. And then after came Lenin and the New Order, and again these people were poor and they had no more happiness, and so what did they really gain was the, the question that was asked. But there was a wonderful parallelism between the music and the miming, so there are no words. But also for others, because also one thing that Anne insisted upon, and I think it was a great idea, the children have to perform, have to be in front of an audience at least once a month, more importantly once every 3 months, when there would be the spring concert, the Christmas concert, and so on, and also perform plays.
Yeah, acting.
So there was
very
the French plays. There were the French plays which we wrote together, funny like that. The American in Paris, of course, saying I want un chaud chien instead of the hot dog, things like that. And then the English plays, which were more classical. Her brother was an actor, and she had a great admiration for her brother, and she wanted this to show at the school.
And the Greek play, I remember, was incredible.
Which one was it? I don't remember that one. So history, music were also performed for the parents by the children, and that helps to assimilate what you are learning. The fact of performing it and having a goal, that's another thing she insisted on. Have a goal. Prepare them for a show, for a play.
And
So
acting will help the children in music too, a lot.
That's
And
very
it was also very, very important to see that some kids who were maybe more timid with playing things like this were really performing and acting very well, and give them some assurance,
Confidence.
self-esteem. It was
Confidence.
very important in the school.
Do you remember why why Anne insisted on music from 8 to 10? What the reason was behind that 8 to 10 in the morning music?
Best hours.
Because they're fresh.
Yeah.
It's they're fresh. They're ready to learn. It's the best hours of the day. She used to wake up very early. In fact, herself, she was the first to come and open the school at 7:30. The school started at 8. She opened everything. So for her, it was normal to get up, get ready, and do it right there in the morning.
And she had some idea about the faculty too, about the music faculty.
Yes, well, at the
Before-
beginning, the first year, I must say, I was in charge of teaching music history. So a parent came to me and said, well, listen, you can't even read music. How can you teach music history? So I really felt bad. And the year after, then Charlene Brendler came in. Is she still on the faculty?
Yes, she is.
Oh, my
Yes, she
goodness.
is.
Fantastic. So she came in. Well, another person you could interview.
Yeah.
And so I was relieved, and she did a good job. Yeah. And the other teachers some of them were parents, like Kim's father,
Yeah.
who taught science, Kim
Wells.
Wells. I don't remember his name. He was an Egyptologist, really, but also in love with the planets and astronomy, so he taught them for several years. Several were students from the university who were finishing their PhD or something. Remember that the school was very close to the campus, so for them it would be easy to come, teach 1 hour or 2 hours a day, and then have a little salary. And she wanted people who were well prepared. She always thought that the big fish in a small pond was much better than the opposite. A big fish being a person really prepared, who loved the what you're teaching is the subject, who loved their subject, and who would know how to lead the children even beyond the curriculum, beyond what was really what they had to learn during that year, and see the wider picture. So we had an excellent, for instance, math teacher, first Ivona from Poland, first year or two, and then Skeggy, who was from Iceland, who was there for several years also, who were finishing their PhD at the camp at Berkeley. English was more difficult, also because she had some very ideas that were quite, how would I say, quite exact of what she wanted in English. She loved English literature. Her brother was this actor, Shakespeare actor. And so to find the right person, we had a mother of a student for several years. I could look it up, but I don't remember her name. And then changed quite often. Then when we came here, we had already, once we found Brad, that was it.
Evidently,
It didn't change anymore, but that was more difficult.
So actually, Berkeley as a community lent itself really well.
Really well.
Yeah.
Because there are all these resources in the parents and the teachers and
Yes.
everyone who could
That's
help.
right.
I was remembering, and I wonder if you remember this too, Brigitte, Anne's idea about the music faculty teaching from 8 to 10 in the morning. Do you recall this, or maybe this is just me, that she felt that she was suspicious of any music teacher who didn't have a rehearsal to go to by around 10 in the morning.
Yeah.
Do you remember? And so that's why she was able to get people in
Yeah.
to teach from 8 to 10.
Right. That's right.
Does that
Yeah, yeah,
ring true for
absolutely.
you? It's just, I'm not making that up.
Another important aspect that we discussed from the beginning was sport. I was really, because I had been in a boarding school where sport was very important in Switzerland, and I thought that the children really needed a lot of exercise. So that's why we had this Wednesday afternoon for sport, except when they had to have a rehearsal for the concert that was coming up. And when we were up in the old place, we would play tennis on the courts, which are just underneath the school on the other side, because she was on the faculty, so she could use the courts from the university for her school, for the children. And also we both had two huge old station wagons. So when the children were so few, we could load the whole school in two station wagons and go up to Cordonices Park or somewhere else. It was great fun. No seat belts in those days. So sport was important, and this PE thing every day. And we thought that it was important for them to let out a bit of energy during PE. Here we had this opportunity of having this park lower down where we played soccer, we played capture the flag.
Rose Park, right? The Cedar Rose Park.
Cedar Rose. Mm. So that was also, I think, an important thing, an important aspect of education at that age.
Anne herself was quite a sporty.
Quite a sporty. At the beginning we used to play tennis together too. And Duncan was there, her son-in-law, used to play, and somebody else, so we could even play four.
Wasn't it true that Anne came to music, was serious about music rather late by today's standards, because she was very athletic and also...
I heard that, yes.
Yeah, I think
that's
she
right.
played lacrosse.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, and tennis.
And tennis
Tennis
was
for
quite
sure,
good.
yeah.
Yeah. And we could tell when she didn't care too much about tennis anymore, that her energy in that field at least was lowering. I mean, especially at the end, oh no, I don't want to play tennis. It was a bit of a shame. Also, when we came away from those tennis courts, we couldn't play here, so that was it. But also we insisted that the field behind there, we could use it I think it still belonged to the public school, but it was important for the children to play basketball right here.
I'm struck by the difference in the school, as you describe it, from the kind of European model that you said you came from and which Anne was searching for.
Yes.
You talk about the Shostakovich being mimed and the children falling on the ground. It seems very far. I went to a Swiss boarding school briefly. Seems very far from the kind of European formality. And I'm remembering a quote from a child in the old video on YouTube, where the child said, "Oh, it's not really like a school; it's more like a club, and we all belong."
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it seems like the desire for something more European led here in Berkeley to something that was quite different.
Yeah, well, that's
The
probably
basic
why it's so interesting, because it has both aspects. I mean, academically we want to achieve something, but also we have all this kind of laid back and enthusiasm of an American school, with the children having their saying, many decisions, acting, playing, doing sport, all that. But I must say the boarding school I went to in Switzerland put a lot of emphasis on sport, of all kinds. So that I have it in my own upbringing, let's say. But I think that's the blend between the two more formal academic European side and the more and music also here. I mean, she was very strict about they had to be there on time. If they started talking with each other, she would bang her foot down and say that's enough and shout, and there was silence that you would find also in Europe in a way. But at the same time,
It's one thing
relax.
you should talk about is what you te rendu compte?
What you found out.
Yeah, that when the academic started after 2 hours of music, the children were really much more concentrated, and that the music added a lot to the academic learning.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, because
interesting.
after 2 hours of concentration on the music, listening to each other,
Listening.
mainly because it's chamber music, it's group music, ensemble. When they came to class, they were ready to listen, and it would be. But they needed those 10 minutes before class just to let out steam. So that was, I think, it's perfect.
And what about I think Lisa mentioned that she had a idea about boys, a special approach to boys, that boys at this age are difficult. Do you know anything about that? That she had
For the music, you mean?
for the music, that she had a kind of a gender-specific approach. I don't know if
That
you've
girls were
noticed.
better prepared or something?
Not that the boys are probably more difficult to make do music, so we have to be a little different.
I don't
I
think
You
think
don't-
she said it a little differently,
Ah,
which
okay.
was that it wasn't that they were difficult, it's just that it was very important to her to be able to reach them where they were as middle school age boys. Growing into men, finding their way, she felt that it just took something, a special kind of mindset to be able to reach them and bring them out.
I
Maybe not the word difficult.
never
so
had
much.
this impression that she made a difference between boys and girls.
Oh.
I think she had the same idea for girls. Very important for them to s'affirmer, enfin,
To express themselves.
to express themselves, and I don't see that at all.
Yeah, it's just that right now, I mean, gender theory, they do acknowledge that there are differences between boys and girls
Yeah.
at this age. And so for pedagogues to have a more subtle approach to these two, like boys are more physical, blah, 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 girls are more sensitive, whatever. So I just thought maybe she was going ahead of time, being a little more in tune with the differences to bring out the, in them concentration
Well, I
and
wouldn't say so.
No.
Because there was some very sensitive boys and girls that were like boys.
Ah, okay.
Absolutely.
There's a big mixture,
Yeah.
in fact. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
How did the school change, do you feel, as it as it grew and maybe as it changed location? Were there changes that just happened because of that?
Yeah. No.
Yes, it did change, because there it was a small community, and maybe we were 35, 40 kids maximum. We couldn't fit more. We went by the other day and said, how is it possible to put 40 kids in these 3 rooms? So it made a difference to have a larger body of students around. Also the building, for us who were born with the school there, suddenly we were a bit lost. We had to adapt. The board was more important then. The board had taken things in their hands, because at the beginning Anne was the one who dictated the board too, what they had to say and to do. It was a cooperation between the two, but it was really Anne's opinion that prevailed. Then at the last years at the school, the board became more and more important, because for financial reasons we couldn't continue like that with few students, but 2 faculties, one for the music, one for the academics. It was impossible. And so, thanks to Michael Dolby and several other parents, they thought the school should have their own building and be able to borrow money on that property. I don't know exactly what that meant, but... And so the board also here became more important in reviewing certain when you hire somebody, when you
The
hire
background of that person.
the background of the teachers, the building itself. I remember there was quite a discussion about the color of these walls. Some of us, because I was also on the board, we had certain ideas, others different, but finally the board's opinion, certain people on the board's opinion prevailed, fine. But that was not like that at the beginning. It was Anne and I who really decided, and then go ahead.
And Anne had to fight to really always putting music first. They wanted computers in every room.
Yes,
they wanted
that's a good point.
And there was a really big fight.
She wasn't a great fan of computers. She said, you have to think on your own, and don't ask the machine to do it for you. And so she resisted a lot, whereas Michael, for instance, and others in the board said, no, we have to go on with our time. The children need to know how to work it. And she would have been a bit perplexed in front of all these computers. But it did change. It did change. Also the sport I was telling you about, no more tennis suddenly.
Were the plays equally as important then?
The plays?
The plays.
Yes,
They
yes.
Yeah.
Because we could use the chapel on top for the plays, the
But
big
when we
plays.
came here, at this
Oh, yeah.
building, did that continue? Did the curriculum pretty much stay the same?
Stay the same, exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. We had this big stage. I remember up there was a big hall down below under the church, but it was not really a stage. It was 3 steps and then a platform. And so when we had plays from our house, we brought the curtains, furniture, clothes, everything. Half of the house came down to the school just for staging. Here it's already more professional.
And also the music, we had the impression that here, with much more children, we had to do much more orchestra and less chamber music.
Oh, interesting.
And that was a little... So we managed to do orchestras, and then another group where chamber music, and the next hour it was the contrary. But Anne wanted really to put more on quartets and trios.
And why? Why did she feel that chamber music was essential for children or for anyone, for a musician? Why chamber music?
I think that with orchestra, each child is... you don't really need to listen the same way. They are more lost in a big group. And chamber music, it's really much more in details, in expression, in technique, in socially, really. And that was a very positive thing at the school, at least at the beginning. Very often in chamber music you had, let's say in a quartet, you have a child 9 years old with 14 years old. There was a big mixture of age, and that was very interesting. instead the big group is it's more fake, you know. I don't know how to say it in American.
Did you feel that what they learned in chamber music in those small groups carried over to other things that they did academically?
Absolutely.
In other
Absolutely.
ways?
The sense of listening, of participating, of letting somebody express himself or herself, and then enter into. I think it's very important.
Mhm.